Welcome back, Patriots, for another episode of the Bald Brad Show. It is officially hump day. It is Wednesday, October 16th. We are just about 2 weeks or so out from the election, and it is the most important election of our lifetime. I know everybody's saying it, but it is true. I mean, I'm not saying we're not going to have a country anymore, but hell, we are on the verge of World War III. Your taxes are going to go through the roof. The economy's teetering between a recession, not a recession. You can't afford a home. You can't afford groceries, gas, energy, everything. So this is an important election, and we got to get out and vote, folks. Patriots, it's good to see you. We are blowing up the podcast in the last 2 weeks. I don't know what's going on, but ever since we confronted YouTube in terms of our main podcast, we went from like 300 views to almost getting 1,000 views per podcast on YouTube. Now, our regular videos, well, I don't know what's going on with that. That's for another story. And then we're killing it over at Rumble. Greatly appreciate you joining us over at Rumble. Go follow us so you're notified. And also give you guys some updates on what's going on with YouTube in terms of, are we going to have a channel here by Saturday? Right now, I don't know. But we did overcome 2 of the 5 legal battles, I guess you can call them, with CBS and YouTube. So we need to overcome these next 3, and we will see. So there's not like lawsuits being filed, but you have to do some like legal stuff for copyright strikes and all this other stuff. I don't want to bore you with it, but we are pushing back on my end. Well, let's jump into the news, folks, because we got Donald Trump showing up and pulling out a 2016 Trump, 2018, maybe a little bit of a 2020 style Trump here with Bloomberg. This went bonkers viral yesterday, where stupid people made these deals. Trump spars with Bloomberg, editor-in-chief on the economy. I mean, Trump was not backing down yesterday, and we got about 5 to 6 clips here to show you. They're really short, but the guy from Bloomberg comes out and he goes, well, you know, we invited Kamala Harris and she declined. Of course she did. Even though Kamala Harris just yesterday is telling the American people that Donald Trump is hiding. He's too scared to do interviews. She's an idiot. She's so far off the reservation, it's head spinning. Listen to what this guy has to say.
The first is just for the record and for those people watching on television, the Economic Club of Chicago and Bloomberg both invited Vice President Harris to a similar interview about her economic plans that she has declined so far. The first is just for the record and for those people watching on television.
Well, she declined. Of course she did. Can you imagine Kamala Harris sitting there with the editor-in-chief of Bloomberg for the Economic Club and her trying to talk about her policies? Insane. Insane. I don't think so. She'd be bumbling. I was born in a middle-class family. Yeah, sure you were. Well, here's Trump talking about tariffs. There are no tariffs. Host is confused. No, there are no tariffs. Well, Trump, kind of clears it up here.
Tariffs also have another side. Isn't that something that you have to acknowledge?
No.
You could be plunging America into the biggest trade war since Smoot-Hawley.
But there are no tariffs.
You're going to stop. There are tariffs already at the moment.
There are no tariffs. All you have to do is build your plant in the United States, and you don't have any tariffs.
But people, in a lot of places like this, tariffs also have another.
So a lot of people are getting confused, especially on the left, when Donald Trump talks about his tariffs, and he's talking about it in correlation to China and how China is not competing at in a fair market, in a fair free market. And so what he's doing is he's imposing the tariffs on China. And yes, you guys, it is true that we pay those tariffs on our end, but the hope is that those tariffs will be so expensive that these businesses, these corporations do not want to pass them on to the consumer any longer, where it would just make more sense for these companies, these corporations to build in America, hire American workers, get a tax break that Trump wants to do. And it just makes more sense to do it that way. So there is a bigger picture to here of what he wants to do. But the way that Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and the Democrats are playing it off as is a saying, well, this is a sales tax. Yeah, in some way, shape, or form, truthfully, it kind of is. But the goal is to offset and make it fair in terms of the trade. And well, again, it is a good move by Trump, so much so that even the Democrats, Joe Biden, are even doing it. So you also have this being said, in terms of coming from Bloomberg, stating you're talking about 10 to 20% tariffs on the rest of the world.
10-20% tariffs on the rest of the world. That is going to have a serious effect on the overall economy. And yes, you're going to find some people who will gain from individual tariffs. The overall effect could be massive in terms of the economy.
I agree it's going to have a massive effect, positive effect. It's going to be a positive, not a negative.
Well,
let me just tell you, I know how committed you are to this, and it must be hard for you to, spend 25 years talking about tariffs as being negative and then have somebody explain to you that you're totally wrong. It'll have a negative, it will have, I'll go a step further.
40 million, President Trump, 40 million jobs is a lot of jobs to rely on.
They're all coming back.
Those are 40 million jobs. Those are 40 million jobs in America that rely on trade.
Are you ready?
I love it. I freaking love it. So we got a little bit of a hiccup here in terms of the connection. So we'll go ahead and refresh that because I want to see what Mr. 45 has left.
It'll have a negative. It will have. I'll go a step further.
40 million, President Trump, 40 million jobs is a lot of jobs to rely on.
They're all coming back.
Those are 40 million jobs. Those are 40 million jobs in America that rely on trade.
Are you ready? John Deere, great company. They announced about a year ago they're going to build big plants outside of the United States, right? They're going to build them in Mexico.
And you threatened them with tariffs and they stopped.
That's right. I said, if John Deere builds those plants and not selling anything into the United States, they just announced yesterday they're probably not going to build the plants, okay? I kept the jobs here.
He's right. So again, there's two ways of looking at the tariffs. What Donald Trump wants to do is create a market where whether China's changing their currency or creating cheaper labor, we want to hire American workers here. And ultimately, if you impose that tariff, well, you would imagine that at some point it's going to offset itself. And I believe that it is in some way, shape, or form. And I want to mention again, you guys, the Democrats are partially right that we are paying the tariffs. And it is, in a sense, a tax that is being passed down to all of us. But at some point, it's going to be more cost effective for corporations to build here. Furthermore, President Trump says the higher the tariff, the more likely it is that the company will come into the United States and build a factory here. And he's correct.
The higher the tariff, the more likely it is that the company will come into the United States and build a factory in the United States so it doesn't have to pay the tariff. The higher the tariff, the more...
He's correct. He's correct. And Democrats don't want to look at this. And by the way, a lot of Democrats want to sit there and obfuscate the exact plan that he's trying to do. And by the way, it does not always work. But it has been working in some way, shape, or form with China. Hell, it worked with the auto companies. Granted, the auto companies have to be a little bit careful because now, in a sense, we're looking at a global market to where if you sit there as a labor union and you want to negotiate the price of your labor for your union workers, then you have to be careful because some of these auto manufacturers will just go out of country and have places like China or India or Vietnam, whatever it may be, build those vehicles for a lot cheaper. And now, well, instead of you just getting a slight increase in raise, now you have just no job at all, no pension, no retirement, and you just price yourself out of the market. So this has a lot deeper ramifications than I think people want to see or talk about. But we only have an hour-long podcast, folks. So let's continue here with Mr. 45 laying down the law, baby.
You have said that Taiwan should pay for U.S. protection.
Yeah.
I ask because this morning you just mentioned North Korea. The Chinese army, literally as we speak, are engaged in rehearsals for a full naval blockade of Taiwan. So I suppose my question to you, if China invades Taiwan, would you send American troops to defend it?
Well, the reason they're doing it now is they're not going to do it afterwards, okay? So it's, so they're doing it now. They want to do it China. Now, look, I had a very good relationship with President Xi, and a very good relationship with Putin, and a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un, who has a nuclear force that you won't even believe.
You have said that.
I also want to point out that this was probably about 2 years ago. There was a memo that was sent on behalf of the United States military. I believe it was a general to all his troops. And what it was being stated in the memo was we need to be ready for a potential war, a world war with China starting around 2025 because we have intelligence coming from the Chinese that's been leaked out to all of us. We've seen audio, we've seen images. We actually know their whole strategic plan down to the province of which provinces China needs to make sure that they maintain if they were to invade Taiwan, because once those provinces get shut down or obliterated, then they have no longer the supply chain that they need and ultimately be successful in taking over Taiwan. So that's how detailed this stuff is, folks. And we've covered it all about 2 years ago. Again, just look in our catalog for our videos. This memo was sent out, and it's projecting around 2025. And so Donald Trump, you know, that's why we need somebody that's strong in there going, look, we're not going to mess around. If you want to sit there and try to take over Taiwan, then there might be some hell to pay. But because you have a weak president and a weak vice president in office, that's why you have Hamas doing what they did to Israel. That's why you have them launching rockets from Lebanon into Israel. That's why you have these terrorist attacks taking place all around the world, like you saw in Russia with that concert, but like you also would have saw during our election day with that individual that was going to have a terrorist attack here on November 5th. You have terrorists blowing up merchant vessels all around the globe, sending them to the bottom of the ocean. So the weak president that we have, along with the weak vice president, doesn't want to do anything, especially when it comes to the Iranians and other evil entities that want to wipe us off the face of the earth. Donald Trump continues here where he will stop foreign countries from taking advantage of the United States on trade. Again, he's consistently putting America first, where the Democrats want to put America second, third, fourth, fifth, et cetera, et cetera.
They're taking a tremendous advantage of us, $350 billion on trade, and we're then supporting them. In other words, it's not sustainable. You can't keep doing this. You can't have that, China, all of these countries. And stupid people made these deals. I saw trade deals that were so stupid that you'd have to be, that was so bad that you'd have to be an idiot to sign them. And we signed them for years. We had, I could tell you trade deals that I have never seen anything. I said, who would agree to this? They had to be corrupt. They had to be corrupt. To make those deals, they had to be corrupt, because there is no way a rational human being, I always say either corrupt or extremely stupid, because there's no way a rational human being would ever sign the trade deals that this country signed. And I got out of many of those deals. So
he's correct. And by the way, I agree with him. I think it's all corrupt. And that's why allegedly there's money flowing in from China, from Romania, from Ukraine, into Joe Biden's son's pocket, into Joe Biden's brother, James Biden's bank account. And all of a sudden there's these checks rolling in for hundreds of thousands of dollars into Joe Biden's bank account for a truck payment or for rent. Oh, I sold a painting. Sure you did. So there's a lot of corruption taking place, and we've all known this for quite some time. This isn't really anything new, but nobody wants to look under the hood on this stuff. You have a bunch of sellouts in Washington, D.C., both Republican and Democrat, by the way, but I think there's a little bit more of the slimy, swampy Democrats that are more corrupt than Republicans. But all of this is taking place because there are a bunch of sellouts over there. And it's kind of our fault because we keep voting in these idiots. The person that's not an idiot is Donald Trump. And I love how the Democrats try to pretend like this guy's an idiot. The guy's a billionaire. The guy runs multiple businesses. And by the way, look at the way that he raised his family. Okay, Donald Trump is far from an idiot. If you want to know what a true idiot looks like, look at Kamala Harris. Look at her husband. Look at Joe Biden. Look at his wife. Look at his son. Look at that family. And that will tell you everything you need to know about. And by the way, they're still pushing this whole idea that there wasn't a peaceful transfer of power. It shows you how biased here Bloomberg is, because he's getting flustered by Donald Trump pushing back on his idiotic policies, meaning the Bloomberg policies as editor-in-chief. And so he gets so flustered that he has to bring up this transition of power all the way back from January 6th. And Donald Trump obliterates him here.
3 weeks to go to the election. Will you commit now to respecting and encouraging a peaceful transfer of power?
Well, you had a peaceful transfer of power.
You had a peaceful transfer of power. You had a peaceful... Come on, President Trump. You had a peaceful transfer of power compared with Venezuela, but it was by far the worst transfer of power for a long time.
What? Don't you love that? It was the worst peaceful transfer in a long time. So you are acknowledging the fact that there was a peaceful transfer. It's astonishing how Democrats just love to switch or swing, maneuver, manipulate, gaslight the American people as if Donald Trump wasn't willing to leave office. He literally left office. We watched him do it. He's sitting there admitting it right now. Yeah, there was a peaceful transfer. I walked out. Now I'm running again.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because this is what they like to do. This is what they like to do.
The question, President Trump, is would you...
Shut up and let the guy talk. I'm so tired of these reporters, these journalists, these nut jobs, these editor-in-chiefs constantly interrupting Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. You don't do this with Kamala Harris. You don't do it with Tim Walz. You don't do it with Nancy Pelosi. You don't do it with Chuck Schumer. You don't do it with AOC. You don't do it with Ilhan Omar. You don't do it with Rashida Tlaib. You don't do it, and the list goes on and on with Democrats. But for some ungodly reason, when Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, a Republican, Vivek Ramaswamy, Tom Cotton, Tim Scott, it doesn't matter, Ted Cruz, all of a sudden you guys just want to sit there and get your little panties in a bunch and act like you're holier than thou and start cutting these guys off left and right. Man, it ramps me up. It ramps me up. Just shut up. Your job is to ask the questions, let the guy answer. You're getting the biggest notoriety you've ever had in your lifetime, sir.
Respect the decision.
When I found out about this interview, I did a little check. He's a man that has not been a big Trump fan over the years. So I had a choice. Do I do this interview or not? I'm glad I did it. But do I do this interview or do I disappoint a lot of people? Because I know a lot of people in the audience. But his view is very different than mine. Let me just tell you.
I'm asking you a question, Trustro.
We had a term, peacefully and patriotically. These were people. If you think an election is crooked, and I do, 100%, if you think the day it comes when you can't protest, you take a look at the Democrats. They protested 2016. They're still protesting it. Nobody talks about them. But if we protest, we want to have honest elections.
Bingo. But nobody can wrap their head around it, that we just want people to look under the hood. By the way, if there's a Republican that's voting fraudulently, then yes, I don't want his vote to count or her vote. I don't care who you are, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green Party, nut job, psycho, illegal immigrant. I don't care who you are. Yeah, your vote shouldn't count. Okay? If you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing, it's voided. But they can't wrap their head around it. There was no transition tasteful. I'm an idiot. God. And so, speaking of idiots, you got Ian Sams coming up here. This is the guy that basically looks like the current guy from Blue's Clues. And, well, he has this to say in terms of Donald Trump is retreating into himself in the small MAGA universe, whatever the hell that means.
And that is probably one of the clearest contrasts that you're going to see in the last 3 weeks of this race. You're going to see the vice president out on the trail every single day talking about her ideas, going to these big media platforms to share her vision with the biggest number of Americans possible, while Donald Trump continues to sort of retreat into himself in the small MAGA universe that is all about him. And because that's all he's really interested in right now. And that is probably one of the...
What? He's literally on Bloomberg, you idiot. As you are talking, they're actually running Bloomberg right now of Chicago. The same Chicago that has been ran by Democrats for decades. Mayor Lori Lightfoot, we watched her fall apart in real time and watched what the Democrat Party does to people. If you saw before and after photo of when Mayor Lori Lightfoot, the prior mayor, before she was replaced by another lefty white whack job, is when you looked at her, she looked somewhat like a human being compared to when she left, unrecognizable. You would not be able to tell it's the same person. In the same way, when you look at Bill Clinton, when he took office, compared to Bill Clinton that we just saw yesterday, Democrats just run through their people, man. I'm telling you what, that's what evil looks like, and that's what evil will do to you. Donald Trump looks great. I mean, even Kamala Harris is looking a little ragged. Oh, let me tell you. She's looking a little ragged. Am I not right, folks? She's looking a little rough. She's looking a little rough. Somebody that's not looking rough, that's looking good and out there just kicking butt is Byron Donalds, baby. Byron! He rips Obama over his economic claims, and I love that Byron's coming out, especially after Barack Obama comes out and rips black men for basically not shilling for Kamala Harris. Well, maybe they're kind of waking up to the fact that they've been panderized or they've been pandered to by the Democrat Party for decades now. And maybe they've kind of had enough of it, where Republicans and conservatives aren't willing to offer people handouts. You got to work for what you get. I'm not saying everybody has equal opportunities and equal access to things, but you're given a certain set of cards, and it's what you do with those cards to determine if you're going to be successful or not in this country. And by the way, you could pretty much be dealt any hand of cards and basically be successful in this country. But here's Barack Obama, and here's Byron.
Accept those big tax cuts.
How do you respond to that?
Very easily. I was working in finance during Barack Obama's administration. Let me tell you,
I want to go back to kind of cut Barack off a little bit.
He didn't do nothing. Accept those big tax cuts.
How do you respond to that?
Very easily. I was working in finance during Barack Obama's administration. Let me tell you, the economy under his especially the last 5 years, was growing at about 1 to 1.5% per year. I think at the time, President Obama was saying that, this era of large economic growth is something of the past. We're going to have a more consistent economy. Well, in his words, a consistent economy meant one that barely grew. So when Donald Trump came in, he brought his tax cut policy in, which cut taxes across the board for everybody in our country. Couple the fact that he did cut massive regulations from the Obama administration. And what did we see? Economic growth in the United States went from 1.5% under Barack Obama to 3.5% under Donald Trump. Wages adjusted for inflation, like I said, because it's the truth, increased for every subgroup of Americans in our country. The wealth gap was closing. We were actually booming economically far more than we did under Barack Obama. So that's a cool statement he made on the stump, but it's not true.
Byron, man. Here's Barack Obama's face. And there's Byron slapping the shit out of it. Oh, God, that was good. And I love the fact, again, that you have a black man coming out, sitting there, and recognizing the fact that a lot more people are prosperous under Donald Trump. And the reason why I'm just emphasizing the race, because you all know at this point that race means nothing to me, is because the Democrat Party love to make everything about race. Everybody, by far, was doing a lot better under Donald Trump. And the Democrat Party will sit there and lie to the American people saying, Donald Trump's tax cuts only help the wealthy. He literally changed the brackets for everybody. On average, Americans were saving 3% on average. Everybody. Unless you jumped up a tax bracket because the economy was doing so freaking good that you were actually making more money. You don't see anybody jumping in the next tax bracket very much under Biden's administration. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but what I'm saying is you saw a lot more people making a lot more moolah and being able to pay their bills under Donald Trump's administration than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And ain't nothing going to change. As I've mentioned, folks, taxes will go up under Kamala. She's a Democrat. Naturally, they wanted to have it go up. They want to pay for all sorts of things. You think all these illegals living here, the 25 million that we have, are going to sit there and pay themselves? Of course not. And so she comes out and says, well, Donald Trump needs to have a cognitive test. Donald Trump needs to have a cognitive test. We saw that the other day, did we not, Patriots? She sat there and said this guy should release his medical records. We haven't seen his cholesterol, as if that has anything to do with it. And why don't you sit there and release Joe Biden's cognitive test, you dimwit? You're the one that's his vice president that's covered this up. So I don't need to see Donald Trump's cognitive test. I don't see him slurring his words, fighting with his teleprompter, looking for dead people, falling up a flight of stairs, falling off his bicycle stationary, seeing dead people, looking for dead people in the crowd, allegedly taking photos with people that weren't even at the event nor the same state that he's claiming they were in. And Kamala, you fight with your teleprompter as well. You can't answer basic questions, which is why you don't do all these interviews at like Bloomberg, or you only go on these family-friendly Democrat sites and channels like ABC, right? You guys only sit there and have your shill. Prior press secretary, I believe he was his name, George Stephanopoulos. So Trump comes out and says, well, maybe Kamala should take a cognitive test. I love it. You want me to take one? You take one too. And by the way, he's already done 2 or 3 of them when he was president. I love this. Again, the gaslighting is unreal. The gaslighting is just through the roof. Former President Donald Trump said on Sunday night that Vice President Kamala Harris should take a test on cognitive stamina and agility. And by the way, if she's going to take one, can we kill two birds with one stone and go ahead and get Joe Biden in that same room? Because I want to know what's going on with him. Arguing that her slow and lethargic answers during interviews are concerning. Love Trump. I love him. He's just so good. The physical and mental resiliency required to successfully execute the duties of the presidency. Harris used her medical report to attack Trump, suggesting that the 78-year-old former president is hiding whether he's fit for office. She's an idiot. Anybody that believes in that, you are so ass backwards. Your head is so far up your you-know-what. It's mind-blowing. You haven't seen daylight for a long time. Trump fired back, saying on Truth Social, I believe it's very important that Kamala Harris pass a test on cognitive stamina and agility. Her actions have led many to believe that there could be something very wrong with her. Now, I think cognitively, like her brain is functioning. I just think it's misfiring. You know what I mean? Like you could have a car that's functioning, but it's just misfiring. It's out of tune. It's not working correctly. And quite frankly, Kamala Harris's brain, just like Joe Biden and the rest of the Democrat parties, it has not worked correctly for a long time. That's why Chicago is being driven into the ground. That's why New York is being driven into the ground. Ever since Rudy Giuliani left, what happened in New York? Hell, look what happened with California with Democrats running the show as the governor now, riding the state into the ground. That's what Democrats do. They do it at a local level, they do it at a state level, and they also do it at a federal level. Case in point, Barack Obama. Case in point, Joe Biden. Case in point, Kamala Harris. I mean, how many times do you need to look at Democrats to see that they just suck at doing their job? Karine Jean-Pierre, Nancy Pelosi ran California. It's endless. AOC with her, I don't know how the hell she got reelected in New York. It just shows how dumb they are over there. If you're from New York and you're Republican, I am so sorry. In the same way, you know, I'm sorry for myself that I'm still here in the state of California. Now, we got CNN here saying, watching Harris lean into attacks on Trump's mental acuity is just rich. I believe this is Scott Jennings, and we've been highlighting him quite a bit because he's been slapping CNN around, and not just like one or two people, the entire panel.
If I were Harris, I wouldn't be leaning too heavily into who's hiding what kind of medical conditions of people who are or want to be the president, given her role in lying about the condition of Joe Biden for the last 4 years. That's number one. Number two, bingo. I don't think this works for her. I think I'm back in the same bucket I was earlier. You're not selling your own candidacy. You're punching Donald Trump in the same way every other Democrat we've ever heard from for the last 8-9 years has punched this guy. That's not the problem with your campaign. We've heard all the attacks on Trump. If she cannot sell her own candidacy any better than just punching on him, I'm for her. If I were in her camp, I just don't know it's going to be enough. That's my view.
Smart for the Kamala Harris campaign to continue to remind people
honestly, just to be lectured by Democrats about you have to have mental acuity to be the president of the United States. After what we just lived through for the last 4 years,
Scott,
come
you love that
on,
talking
don't lecture me
point.
about
Love
mental
it.
acuity in
Love
the
that talking
presidency.
point.
But when Democrats, or who all, you included, who all assured us that Joe Biden was riding unicycles and juggling knives in the Oval Office, when we know that wasn't true, and Harris was the chief cheerleader for that whole, the lectures about the mental acuity, come on.
Contrast.
Did you see them start like spazzing out on camera? Well, Kamala Trump is not fit. January 6th racist bigot. Right? Their circuits. I'm telling you, they just start misfiring and twitching. Like, oh God, what do I do? And Scott Jennings, while they're spazzing out, right, basically having a seizure on live TV, all of them, right, their demonic presence is coming out. He's just continue, you know, just smacking them, man. Oh God, that guy is good. That's a good clip right there. That is a good clip. Scott Jennings laying down the law on CNN each and every week, and look, their heads were spinning, right? Did you see them? They're like drooling. They didn't know what they're doing. Like, oh God, how do I combat this? Yeah, because you can't get away from the fact that Joe Biden is so far gone that he doesn't recognize his own family anymore. Joe Biden still thinks he's running for the Senate. Man, wild stuff. Wild stuff. Joe Biden might, honest to God, think he's still running for president. If you're enjoying the show, folks, hit that like button. Again, it really does support us. Let's try to get over 100 viewers on YouTube alone. And heck, let's try to get over 100 viewers on Rumble as well. We're also over at Twitter if you want to follow us over there, and TikTok. Make sure you check us out on all platforms. And also shout out to Franco. Franco is in the chat, folks, with the wrench there. He is our editor. Shout out to Franco. Greatly appreciate you, sir. Keep up the good work. Kamala signals she's open to spending trillions on racial reparations. Here we go again. It's exhausting. But your taxes aren't gonna go up. Then how are you gonna pay for this, you idiot? Huh, Kamala? How are you gonna pay for it? I hate to say money doesn't grow on trees, but Democrats and maybe Joe himself thinks it does. So Vice President Kamala Harris signaled during an interview on Tuesday that she was open to spending taxpayer money on racial reparations, which studies show would cost trillions of dollars. Some of these people that are asking for reparations are asking about $200 million per each black person. Now, I went ahead in an old video and ran the numbers for you. There is not, and I mean this in all literal sense, it's so crazy that there's actually not enough wealth on the planet. I ran the numbers. There is not enough wealth on the entire earth as this planet exists to pay for it. This is how stupid these people are, and they're not able to rationalize things whatsoever. It's a constant theme from this party, the Democrat Party, to shout stuff to the skies and no brain power to figure out how you're going to pay for it and how it works. Well, Democrats, you want another, because you know there's some in here, right? They always slip their way in here. You want another example? AOC's Green New Deal. Not enough money in the United States to pay for it. But it sounds good, right? It gets the votes because people are stupid enough to believe it. It has been studied. There's no question about that. So here's that clip of her. God, it was a rough interview. It's just another rough interview. I'm considering a plan to force U.S. taxpayers to pay for reparations. Here we go.
So my agenda, well, first of all, on the point of reparations, it has to be studied. There's no question about that. And I've been very clear about that position. In terms of my immediate plan, I will tell you a few of the following. One, as it relates to the economy, which is a lot of what you have addressed. Look, I grew up in the middle class. My mother, worked hard, raised me and my sister. And by the time I was in high school, she was able to afford our first home. I know what it means for an individual and a family to have home ownership. I also know, in the context of history, nobody got 40 acres and a mule. So my agenda.
It really is exhausting, you guys. It is freaking exhausting. And I know it's exhausting for all of you guys having to listen to this lady each and every day. And that's why we need Donald Trump to win this November so that we don't have to listen to her anymore. She's terrible. She sucks at her job. And I hope she doesn't come back to my home state of California. Keep her somewhere else. Can we send her maybe to Iran? She loves funding the Iranians. Did you all hear that report the other day? I should have it queued up. There's a report that she's in bed with basically the Iranians, not physically, because we all heard rumors of how she actually arose to her ascension to the vice presidency or attorney general in California. We all, no pun intended there. But she's been working with the Iranians. And by the way, there's also rumors that just came out that she's also willing to work with the Chinese and basically give them a bunch of United States information. So that also came out within 24 hours. There's just so much news that I have to pull off the top of my head that I can't show you guys everything. And I think you're understanding of that there's only an hour that we have here, and we could possibly do a multi-hour podcast just siphoning through all the news. She goes as far to say here that Donald Trump is a dictator after she just said that she wants to force taxpayers to pay for somebody else's injustices in the past and to pay for those people that had the justices committed against them that are no longer even living anymore. So here's her saying Donald Trump's a dictator. Unbelievable. Just listen to the scummy, slimy evilness of this woman.
Donald Trump would go into the Department of Justice and manipulate it in such a way that it would be used as a weapon against his political enemies.
Yeah, he's going to lock y'all up if he gets back in office.
Well, by the way, you should look at his words. I don't think that you as a journalist should feel so sure that
100%. I'm out of here.
Journalists, judges, others. And you know who does that? Dictators do that. Other countries do that. Donald Trump.
She's an idiot. She's the one that used the DOJ to go after Donald Trump and the political opponents. Franco, there might be a short in there. We might have a couple shorts today for you today, brother. Because I'll tell you what, this administration, as well as the Obama administration and Harris's future administration, God forbid that ever happens, sat there and utilized the IRS to go after their political opponents, conservative Republicans. It was the DOJ. It was the FBI. It was the Democrat Party that sat there and locked up congregation members for attending services when we were at the height of COVID in terms of when they were in office, the Democrats. Remember how they were locking up pastors as well as priests for sitting there wanting to preach the word, which is their God-given right in this country, and they started locking them up? Remember how you could have gotten a hot dog 10 blocks away from January 6th, and all of a sudden you're in court and arrested for having a hot dog just around January 6th? Don't give me this crap, Kamala. You sat there and used the FBI to raid Mar-a-Lago. All the while, you are still in office with a guy that had classified documents when he was neither vice president or a senator, but nobody wants to talk about that. I mean, hell, this guy was so far off his rocker that he put classified documents next to his Corvette and said that it's totally locked up like it's Fort Knox. At least Donald Trump had him hidden away. I mean, Joe Biden's like, I had documents in my garage. I have a garage. It gets worse. It gets worse. She said, voter made really important point that Trump may put minorities in camps. I'm telling you, they are desperate, you guys. And that's why Democrats are sitting there trying to take a bunch of spaghetti and throw it at the wall to see what sticks. He's a racist. He's a bigot. He's a xenophobe. There was no peaceful transfer of power. He's a threat to the country. You had the dude from Joe Scarborough of Morning News, Joe Morning News, or whatever the hell his stupid show's called, coming out about a year ago and saying that Donald Trump's going to start executing people in the streets if he's elected president. This is how off. That's an exact quote almost, by the way. They're so far gone. It is wild. I mean, it's not uncommon for them to do this. Remember when Barack Obama and Joe Biden, I believe it was Barack Obama, said that Mitt Romney wants to put you all back in chains? I think it might have been Joe Biden. I can't remember. They both say crazy ass things. It's common for the Democrats to pull this type of shenanigans. By the way, it's actually literally right now the Democrats, Joe Biden, that are putting minorities, specifically illegal immigrants, in camps because there's not enough room. They've had to actually create camps for these people. It's astonishing. It's astonishing. Like, whatever they sit there and project onto Donald Trump, it's they themselves that are doing all of these things. So the remarks were made during a radio interview that Harris had with Charlemagne the God, where she answered questions about her agenda. Could you please respond to Trump's claim that he's going to use the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, by the way, to round up immigrants if he wins the election? A person who identified themselves as Bobby from Georgia asked Harris. This law was last used to put Asian Americans in internment camps during World War II. And I have a sneaking suspicion that if Trump wins, he's going to use this law to put anyone that doesn't look white into camps, and I'm scared. They're desperate. This is what happens when you are in desperation mode, folks. You start saying crazy shit. Again, he was president for 4 years. None of this happened. People were thriving. Everybody was thriving. Actually, the world was pretty much thriving. Everybody is pretty much peaceful. I understand you have psychos out there doing heinous things. But for the most part, things were going pretty well for everybody. And now he's going to start locking people up. It's going to be crazy. He's going to be executing people in the streets, locking up his political opponents. Now, I'll be fair here. If you think Donald Trump isn't going to sit there and get somebody in the office of the Attorney General to go after Democrats in the same way they went after him, you're sorely mistaken. I hope this guy sits there and uses the full justice of the law to ream you Democrats for 4 years. I'm okay with FBI. I'm tired of this whole bullshit where we got to play fair, you guys. I'm sorry. It's not cutesy time anymore. I'm tired. Brett Byer's show tonight, which I'm going to try to go live, he better not be effing around. I don't want this whole, hey, you know what, ABC, CBS, CNN, yeah, they may have not played fair. You know, they may have sat there and were unbiased, but we're going to sit there and rise above the occasion. Screw that, Brett. Screw that. Now's the time to whip her ass in the shape a little bit here. smack her around a little bit with your questions and expose her for all this crap. I'm telling you what, if I don't hear anything about the 320,000 children, a lot of talk about illegal immigration, a lot of talk about inflation, if I don't hear anything about her covering up Joe Biden's cognitive decline, I'm done with Fox. I am done, because that's bullshit. To not sit there and bring that stuff up, I want to hear about her brother-in-law allegedly taking taxpayer money and embezzling it. I want to sit there and hear about the Biden family corruption. I want to hear her speak on behalf of herself and the rest of the administration why they covered up that guy's cognitive decline for 4 years. And you want to know why? Because if they don't bring that up, that means Brett Baier, Fox News, sold out Republicans, conservatives, and the American people for not bringing that stuff up, because they would have signed the same contract that ABC did that said they could not bring that stuff up. Why did she suck at her job as Attorney General? Why did you sit there and allow criminals to be roaming free in the state of California that committed atrocious crimes across the state, but you're going to sit there and lecture us that I'm the only prosecutor on stage that's actually prosecuted criminals? Maybe you're right, but you also allowed a lot of people out in the same way you're allowing a lot of criminals to sit there and run roughshod over American towns, cities, localities, and killing people, and I'm pissed about it. So Brett tonight better show up. He better show up, or else I'm not going to be happy with that man. I mean, what else am I going to do, right? I'll call him out. But he better, I mean, he asked that. Yeah, look, he went on there and asked everybody, hey, what questions you want me to ask? So I don't know what time that interview's out. Maybe somebody could actually look it up for me. I probably should know. But if I could sit there and stream it tonight, I'm going to. And I'm going to be livid. I'm going to be livid if he doesn't show up. It's a big interview for him. So you have her talking about this act right here. Here's the full quote, the receipts.
Could you please respond to Trump's claim that he's going to use the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to round up immigrants if he wins the election? This law was last used to put Asian Americans in internment camps during World War II, and I have a sneaking suspicion that if Trump wins, he's going to use this law to put anyone that doesn't look white in camps, and I'm scared.
Yeah, so you've hit on a really important point and expressed it, I think, so well, which is he is achieving his intended effect to make you scared. He is running full time on a campaign that is about instilling fear.
Could you please?
It's the Democrat Party that's calling Donald Trump a threat to democracy, a threat to the republic, a threat to the world, to black people. I mean, to everybody. It's their whole party. That's all you've done is sat there and tried to scare people. What the hell are you talking about, lady? I mean, your fear-mongering is so wild that there's a reason why the assassination attempts are only happening against Republicans. And again, we always say this. You want to know what's even more remarkable? Is that Democrats, they sit there and they just, there's no cognition. There's no realization to the fact of what's going on. That's the most mind-blowing thing. At least I could sit there and I'm fully aware when Donald Trump's bullshitting. I'm fully aware when he's sitting there exaggerating. I'm fully aware when he's adding fluff, when he's just being an entertainer and a comedian. I'm at least aware of it. They're not. That's the crazy thing. So here she is, not just espousing it on a radio station, but she's also telling a bunch of Americans he's going to lock you up in camps.
He's talking about the enemy within our country, Pennsylvania. He's talking about that he considers anyone who doesn't support him or who will not bend to his will an enemy of our country. It's a serious issue. He is saying that he would use the military to go after them. Think about this.
Think about this. Yeah. Bitch, there's terrorists here. I would hope that he would go door to door to find those people. There's people that are murderers. There's 13,000 of them, Kamala, that you allowed into the country. How else are you going to sit there and get them? There's rapists here in the thousands. They're sitting there selling off people's children into sex trafficking and forced labor. What else? At least somebody's willing to do something about it. Oh, he's going to sit there and The people within. You mean the terrorists, the criminals, the violent gang members, the sex traffickers, the drug traffickers? Yeah, those people. Yeah, I think we should get rid of them. I think, and by the way, I think everybody can get behind that. That's not like an outlandish thing to say. Does anybody in the chat not want to get rid of criminals? Like, what the hell? That shouldn't be here in the first place. I don't want them harming Democrats. I don't want them harming Americans. But for some ungodly reason, that's too hard for our American friends on the other side of the aisle to wrap their head around. It's too difficult, you guys. You can't expect that from them. In the same way that you can't expect the media to sit there and play fair. So CBS here, just like we saw from 60 Minutes, caught selectively editing another Republican. You could be the judge, and I'm going to show you multiple clips here of their selective editing. So House Speaker Mike Johnson has accused CBS News of selectively editing his answers on disaster relief and election integrity, cutting 5 minutes worth of answers from his 15-minute interview. So here's clip after clip of that taking place, and Fox News is actually highlighting that here, and then we'll get into the clip itself.
Sure you.
So Speaker Johnson, I texted him, just asked him about that exchange last night, and he said, did you see CBS? And I said, no. So I put on Face the Nation. He says they edited his video. He says he'll never agree to it again.
Wow, just
he
like
said
60
they edited.
minutes.
He says they edited. He goes on Face the Nation. It was even more direct, but they edited it out. He goes, I did the interview to make. They made Kamala look better. They edited my video to try to make me look less effective. I will never agree to a non-live interview with CBS again.
Journalistic malpractice. It's 60 Minutes did it. The flash. The
CBS
cuts,
again.
And we know they edit videos because we've seen it last week what they did to Kamala. Completely took a question and lashed into another answer. I don't know if that was ever okay in media.
But to the speaker's point, Brian, that's why he will never do anything that is not live. That's why that's the problem for us. We do everything live.
Mm-hmm.
We would like to fix stuff. We can't.
You remember Trump said that you're good when they take your long answer and they have to edit you down versus Kamala, they have to edit her up.
Damn, Kaylee with that ending right there. God, dude, she's ferocious. It would be so great to have her back as press secretary. God, she's a dime. I mean, not only is she gorgeous, but she's also smart. I mean, that is a Republican woman right there, folks. That is why her husband is going to age well. Whereas if you have Hillary Clinton as your wife, well, you turn into what looks like Bill. If you have Jill Biden as your wife, well, you turn into what looks like Joe. Okay, Joe can't talk. Joe's far gone. It's a constant theme here. So let's see the aired on CBS and the full answer.
That's a different accounting than this 2% you say was distributed.
Yeah, so they've obligated some funds, but they've only distributed 2%. The rescue and recovery effort's still going on, and then we address the rest of it.
So that's a different accounting than this 2% you say was distributed.
Yeah, so they've obligated some funds, but they've only distributed 2%. And when I was there on the ground, and you should go, I mean, bring the cameras and talk to the people there. They'll tell you, don't take politicians' words for this or the administration's word. Talk to the people there on the ground. They had not been provided the resources almost 2 weeks out from the storm that they desperately needed. And when I was there, 13 days post the storm hitting that state, people are still being rescued. They're stuck in the higher elevations in the mountains because the roads are down and all the rest. So they need every available resource and all hands on deck. The rescue and recovery effort's still going on. And then
talk about editing the guy out, right? And I love how what Kaylee McEnany said is they got to edit her up. They got to sit there and fill in time because she's a dodo bird. It doesn't end there, by the way, you guys. There's actually more here from Speaker Mike Johnson's office. Here we go.
It is against the law for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. That's established law.
Of course it is. But here's the problem. There's a number of states that are not requiring proof of citizenship when illegals or non-citizens register to vote. We know that's happening.
But respectfully, Speaker,
everybody should want the law to be followed.
You know that it is against the law for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. That's established law.
Of course it is. But here's the problem. There's a number of states that are not requiring proof of citizenship when illegals or non-citizens register to vote. We know that's happening. Look, Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, I was going to say, he issued an executive order to clean up the voting rolls heading into the election. Less than 30 days out, a couple of days ago, the Biden administration, Department of Justice, Biden-Harris administration, sued the governor and the Commonwealth of Virginia to try to prevent them from cleaning up their voter rolls. See, that kind of thing creates a lot of doubt and concern in the minds of a lot of the American people. Why would they do that? Everybody should want the law to be followed. Yeah.
Correct. They didn't care enough to follow the law when they came into the country illegally. They're sure in hell not going to care enough to sit there and follow the law when it comes to voting, because they know that they could sit there and vote in a Democrat that's going to give them more handouts, like we see in Chicago with $84,000 in benefits or just straight up cash. By the way, there's another clip here. There's no reason to continue it. There's another 2-minute clip where the Biden-Harris administration let millions of illegal aliens into the country, and they were trying to pass the SAVE Act, and they cut them off there as well because they don't want the truth out to the American people. They don't want the truth to take place because they're in desperation mode. And when the Democrats are in desperation mode, so is the media, because they're basically the same exact thing. And it is true that you have illegal immigrants on voter registration rolls. And Youngkin defends Virginia removing non-citizens from the voter registration rolls, saying it's common sense. Now, if you recall, Youngkin's trying to do this in Virginia. Remove people, voters, non-citizens, I shouldn't even say voters, non-citizens off the rolls so they're not able to vote. And guess what the Biden-Harris administration did in the Democrat Party? Yeah, they filed a lawsuit. Correct. We covered it yesterday. So here's Youngkin on CNN with Jake Tapper talking about it.
The Justice Department is suing your state's election officials, alleging that you're violating federal law because you are purging voters that were flagged as potential non-citizens. Now, the issue is not the program, is my understanding. The issue is that the Commonwealth of Virginia was doing it within 90 days of an election. As you know, and I just want to bring the viewers up to speed here, that's the so-called quiet period before an election, 90 days where you're not supposed to be doing such purging. What is your response to this lawsuit?
Yeah, so let me just begin with just correcting a few of the facts that you used to set this up. So first and foremost, this is a law that's been on our books since 2006. It was a law that was signed by then Democrat Governor Tim Kaine, and it requires our election process and governors to use DMV data when an individual self-identifies as a non-citizen, and there is a match with that person on the voter rolls, to then notify that person that they have 14 days to affirm that they're a citizen or not, and if they're not, then they are removed. This process has been in place since 2006. We've just had recent Democrat governors like Terry McAuliffe and Ralph Northam use this exact same process within the 90-day period because it is individualized. An individual starts the process by self-identifying as a non-citizen, and therefore, as governor, I have an obligation, no discretion, to then run the process to notify that person through our registrar that they have 14 days to clear it up. And if they don't clear it up, they're going to be removed from the voter rolls.
Sounds pretty good to me. Sounds pretty good. But, that doesn't go with the Democrats' agenda. And here you have CBS is already normalizing fraud. So already, do you have multiple ballots being sent out to individuals? There's individuals that have moved to a whole new state that are having ballots mailed to them at their new home, even though that ballot is for the state of which they left. You have people that are receiving ballots that are multiplied against themselves, meaning that I could receive like 5 ballots. You also have people that don't have to show ID when they go to the voter registration polls or the polling centers, which is basically almost every place, by the way. So all this foolery starting again. They're going to ballot harvest. Everything you saw in 2020 is going to take place again. Nobody want to look under the hood, including Republicans, by the way. So here's CBS. Just watch this. I can't believe that we're in 2024 now, and the ballot counting is going to take multiple days, you guys. So just a heads up, when we do election night, we might once again not know who's president because different states can't get their shit together and count ballots.
We might think we knew the results of elections a lot sooner in previous elections. We really didn't. It was just the margins were so large that we were able to call the elections earlier. It always takes a long time to count ballots. We're going to see that again, and margins are likely to be tight, so we might need to wait a few days in states like Georgia and elsewhere.
And David, I really don't think we can emphasize enough the way in which each state has different rules for counting, and the result can be somewhat suspicious looking on the surface processes with the count, right? It's not just one. If you got a jar of jelly beans, it's not like one red, one blue, one red, one blue. Sometimes handfuls of results come in at one time, a handful of other results at another time.
You mean kind of like how we had that vertical spike in Wisconsin, which is a huge anomaly, by the way. Yeah, everything's fine. Why do you guys want to look under the hood on that one? Because that's not normal. It's not normal for everybody to go to sleep and Trump is winning and then wake up and there's a vertical spike. Every single ballot in like the tens of thousands was for exactly Joe Biden. Yeah, it's not normal.
Could you just talk generally about how we should see the count unfold at that state level?
Right. So we have to remember, and you mentioned this earlier, we run the most complicated elections in the world.
We run the most complicated elections in the world. You show up and you bubble in an answer. Oh, unbelievable. Unfreaking believable. So the foozery is going to happen again, you guys. We just have to make it too big to rig, which is why I'm asking, and so is every other conservative Republican, guys, get out and vote. If you've never voted before, register. If you're still able to, get out and vote. Make it a thing. Buy some hot dogs, buy some buns and burgers, make a party out of it. You know what I mean? Get everybody over after work. Let's go caravan down there. We'll come back to the place and just have a good time if you can. You know what I mean? Make an event out of it. We should just I don't know why we don't have that as a holiday where everybody just has off work. It's an election day. Go and vote. Have a good time. Freaking start tailgating at the polls. You know what I mean? Flipping the burgers and the dogs, right? Wear the beer helmet with the goggles, you know, the double sipper, right? And hanging out with the boys, having a victory cigar, you know, a Trump victory stogie, and have a good time. Why are we going to work on election day? Well, folks, there's a lot more news to cover. We'll make sure we get into it tomorrow. We do have to end a little bit early today because I got to go into work a little bit early. But your viewership is really important to the show, and I love the community we're building here. I'm asking you guys, if you can, follow us not just over at YouTube, but also Rumble. If you have a subscription, meaning you pay as a member, thank you so much. Your hard-earned money goes into editing the show now. We're trying to grow and build it. And it's all your efforts and your hard-earned money that you guys work for and you putting into the show. It all goes back in. Trust me. I think 100% of the money that you put in, as well as myself, goes back into the show. So we're not making any money. Like, we don't make profit. It doesn't go to paying my bills. In a sense, it goes to paying for the editing services, the Photoshop, the Adobe Premiere, the accounts that we have, the website that I have, all that stuff. So I greatly appreciate your guys' donations. It really does mean a lot to me, as well as your viewership. So even if you don't have the means to donate, you sitting here and hanging out with us, well, that's more than enough, folks. Hit that like button, follow us on both, check out my book, Trojan Horse, How the Left is Destroying America. Everything is in the links in the description. And Patriots, have a blessed day. Hopefully we'll see you a little bit later this afternoon for that Brett Baier interview with Kamala Harris, and he better show up and do his damn job. With that being said, Patriots, I'll see you later. God bless.